Hello world, this is Kyle with NimbleNoggin.io, and we are at another stop on the Swift Components tour. Today's stop is the UI button. The UI button is probably the most simple UI control. And I say this because you pretty much tap a UI button to run some code. So here's what I've got going on in the app. This top UI button is basically here to show two things. One, that a button does not necessarily have to do anything, it can just sit there and look pretty, which leads us to two, looking pretty, you can set an image, in this case a NimbleNoggin.io banner, to the button's view. And since it's not connected to any code, and I haven't edited any functionality yet, when you tap it, it still will flash and highlight like a normal button. And that is something that you can mess with the UI button, customizing how it responds to a tap and its appearance in its different states. We can look at this bottom button, which says do something awesome, and we really want to know what that something awesome is that we can do here. But the button is disabled, the text is grayed out. We click on it or tap on it, nothing happens. These three buttons in the middle are some buttons that are actually hooked up to code, and they are pretty self-explanatory, but we will tap through them anyway. The first one, randomize background color. You tap it, background color is randomized. Buttons have a nice white border that you can see when the background color is randomized. The next UI button says add background image. We tap that, and I'm basically adding this same background image that you see in the master view controller table menu to this view. And also, if we randomize the background color again, it will cover that up. And this change title button, I don't really remember what it does, but we can see what happens. Let's just put that back. So let's check out the storyboard. It is right here, poking out from behind the app a little bit, and you can see my 5 buttons. For each button, I have dragged out a UI button onto the view controller. Now normally in iOS 8, the UI button does not have any borders or background colors or anything. It is just text. But what I've done with each button so that we can see it on all of the different randomized background colors is I've added a UI view background view, and I'm doing air quotes here, background view to each UI button so that it has a black backdrop behind the button. And these 4 buttons down here are actually normal UI buttons with no background color or image or anything, just like this, but displayed over this black background. This bottom button, all we've done differently is uncheck this enabled box so that the text is grayed out and the button won't respond to any touch events. What's different about the top button is that it's resized to be bigger, basically to fit the aspect ratio of the image that I'm using, which is just an image that we have in our XC assets folder right here. And how about some code? Most of the code is responding to the touch events of the UI buttons, but on view.did.load, I'm just doing some view prettifying, making it look a little nicer. And here we have an IB outlet collection with all of the black button backgrounds, and what I'm doing to them is setting a white border to go around them so that they do stand out a little more on the different colored backgrounds, and setting the layers corner radius property to a value other than the default 0. They do have a little bit of a rounded edge. So in our methods that each button is sending a message to, this first one randomizes the background color. We're setting the view.background color to a random UI color. And this is just one way to get a random UI color. You can do that a few different ways, but I'm basically dividing a random number by uint32 maximum value, which will give us a value between 0 and 1, which you normally use when building a UI color. And we're doing that for red, green, and blue, and setting the alpha as 1, and casting each of those to a CG float, which is what these parameters accept for their arguments. With the next button, Add Background Image, we're not doing anything with a UI image view, which is usually where you might see a background image. There is a way to use UI color and a UI image together so that it will display your image at its natural resolution, and just repeat that going to the right and down. And here we can actually see the image repeating going down, but not to the right. As you can tell right here and right here, there's a line going across the screen where the bottom of the first image in the pattern meets up with the top of the next image in the pattern. And they don't perfectly connect, so you do see a little bit of that breakup there. Now, by far the most interesting method and button in this view controller is the Change Title button. I didn't mean for it to surprise anyone, and I know it did. It was way out there. But what we do when this button is pressed, if the title matches what the title is supposed to be, then change the title to Butts. Otherwise, set it back to what the title is supposed to be. So basically, we're toggling the title between these two possible great titles for this view controller. Thanks for watching.